It's my great pleasure to welcome you back to this opening of Visual Intelligence, the new Center for Research-Based Innovation. What we will do now in the second part of the opening is to have two presentations. We will start by an international perspective to the field and also to our center. And we will start with Professor Mark Girolami from the University of Cambridge. So Mark, he started his career in IBM as a chartered engineer, so in industry. And then, after about 10 years, he went into academia. And there he had a meteoric career, basically, involving, for instance, positions at the University of Glasgow, at the Imperial College in London, at Warwick University, and now at Cambridge University. So as you all know, Cambridge University is one of the very, very best universities in the world. And also at the Turing Institute in the UK. I met Mark actually several years ago when I visited him in Glasgow as a PhD student. And Mark has also visited us here at UIT in Tromsø. So it's a very, very big and great pleasure for me to welcome Mark and to hear his presentation. So Mark, if you're ready, then please go ahead.
So I'm absolutely delighted to have been invited just to give a short few words at the launch of the Visual Intelligence Initiative. And what I wanted to do was maybe just share some experience that I've had with a similar initiative in the UK. And there, what we have been trying to do is to get from data to knowledge which is actionable, and taking that knowledge and actually delivering societal impact for good and for value. And so this is work that we have been doing at the Alan Turing Institute in the UK. Now, the Alan Turing Institute is the National Institute for both data science and artificial intelligence within the UK. So it is a national institute and takes partners from a number of the universities within the UK. And as its name would suggest, the Institute really builds on the scientific legacy of Alan Turing, whose work really pioneered the mathematical foundations of both computation and artificial intelligence. And it was in 1950 that he published the paper Computing Machinery and Intelligence, where he, in essence, laid the foundations for the development of artificial intelligence as we know it. So we were very proud in the UK to be taking on the mantle, as it were, of Alan Turing in our institute. Now, I would say that as a Norwegian Centre for Research Innovation, Visual Intelligence is doing exactly the same. It is building on Turing's legacy of artificial intelligence. And it is absolutely clear to governments right across the world, right across the globe, that centres of research excellence in artificial intelligence are becoming really critical from a societal, from an economic, and from a technological perspective. So it's really inspiring to see this level of investment that Norway has made in establishing centres of excellence in artificial intelligence. And it's absolutely clear from the remit of visual intelligence that it is poised to make some major societal impacts, and in critical areas such as health, the environment, and of course strongly related to that is energy and industry. And these are all interrelated. And it's clear, and very similar to the title of this talk, is that visual intelligence is going to be able to obtain data, valuable data, from images, many different types of images that come from the health sciences, from the environmental sciences, and from the engineering sciences that service the industry sectors, the industrial sectors, and the energy sectors. And of course, from this data, the research program is going to develop methods and theories and algorithms and processes to extract knowledge that will be that will be impactful. And again, it's clear that the structure of visual intelligence, the governance of visual intelligence, the network of partners that it has, that societal impact that's desperately needed will flow from the knowledge that's extracted from the data, which is extracted from those images. So visual intelligence really is going to join some of the key players in AI globally, and that would include the Turing Institute, and then Ellis across all of Europe, and then Mila, based in the Montreal region of Canada, and of course the Vector Institute, based in the Ontario area of Canada. And so Norway can also, add to that grouping of world-leading leaders in AI research and its impact and its translation for societal good. If I look at Turing and something that I have been involved in leading, which is what is called the Datacentric Engineering program, and the whole remit of that was to deliver safer, resilient, and more sustainable engineering. Now, that was over 5 years ago, before the drive towards net zero was absolutely a clarion call. And the approach that we set out to take, was to deliver solutions to real-world problems, but also to pursue new science and deliver new science. And also, we wanted to not just be UK-centric, we wanted to have global reach and therefore collaborate globally. And this is one of the reasons why I'm absolutely delighted to be speaking here today, because it's another collaboration that makes the AI remit all the more global. And of course, to develop research leaders in data-centric engineering, so to train the next generation of engineers, and ultimately to revolutionize the engineering discipline. And that impact that would follow from the approach that we adopted has followed. We have been looking at ways in which we can enhance the resilience and the robustness of the sort of critical infrastructure that we rely upon. And if you think about the current pandemic situation and how much more reliant we have been on some of our critical infrastructures, such as supply chains. Now, of course, to make our infrastructure more resilient to the shocks that we are starting to see from the risk of flooding because of climate-induced changes, we need to be able to monitor these complex systems and to allow us to anticipate whatever the high consequence events would be, such as bridge collapses. And we've also wanted to exploit the fact that the design process for autonomous operations, for sensing operations, that can be enhanced and can be accelerated in a data-driven way. And so if I think of one of the examples of this, we started to work with the authority in London that governs all of London, so the 8 million people that live in London. And one of the major concerns, so one of the major health impacts in London, is the quality of air. It is below many European standards and certainly below many international standards. And the Greater London Authority, the Office of the Mayor, have been grappling with how to address this problem. And the authority partnered with us in the Datacentric Engineering program at the Alan Turing Institute. And they asked us, how could we help them to improve the way that they measure air quality? And this was basically going back to the diktat of Lord Kelvin, the great Victorian natural philosopher and engineer, who was once credited as saying that if you cannot measure something, you cannot improve it. So if London wants to improve its air quality, it therefore needs to be able to improve the way that it measures that air quality. And we set up a large project, brought in a large number of researchers, looking at AI and machine learning methods to improve the measurement of air quality across the urban areas of London. And that was proving to be very successful. And then this time last year, it was clear that a global pandemic, a global viral pandemic was going to be coming. And one of the things that had to happen was, of course, lockdowns. And the Greater London Authority came to us in an emergency saying, we need to be able to understand how the population in London is complying with the stay-at-home message. And one of the things that we were able to do with our research teams was take all of the work that we had been doing in measuring air quality and basically pivoted that towards measuring how busy the streets of London were at any one time. And we were using all of the cameras, all of the street cameras, all of the road cameras, the traffic cameras in London, and taking direct video feeds and using some of the AI methods that are being used and will be developed by visual intelligence. We're able to extract the number of people that were in a particular scene, the number of cars, the number of buses and lorries. And you can see that in this slide here. And we were able to make a real impact on the City of London's response to the pandemic. And so this is just one example of where real societal impact can emerge from world-leading research in AI. And it's something that I'm certainly looking forward to, and my colleagues at the Alan Turing Institute are looking forward to, in terms of collaborating with visual intelligence for the sorts of problems that we see here. So let me just draw to a conclusion some of the achievements that we have had, and hopefully as a give them as an inspiration to visual intelligence as it is setting out on its journey, and perhaps as a challenge. So we received £10 million 5 years ago to start the Datacentric Engineering programme of research. 5 years later, the Datacentric Engineering programme is now a programme that has a value of 60 million. So that has really grown. We have over 120 researchers working at the Alan Turing Institute on data-centric engineering, its applications, its theoretical development. We have launched a new international journal on data-centric engineering. Cambridge University Press have done that in order to help establish the creation of a new discipline. We have memorandums of understanding with a number of international research centres. We are also helping to influence the UK government on its own research investments. And of course, the big urban digital twin for London's air pollution that I mentioned. So these are just some of the achievements that we've had. But let me also just say in closing that delivering that societal impact, defining that path from world-class research to actual impact, it's very hard. It's not easy. But it's something that I am absolutely convinced that visual intelligence has the governance structure, has the people, has the investment and the support to deliver a pipeline of world-leading research all the way through to societal and economic impact. And I think that the tight connection that you have between research and industry is going to be one of the major components of your success. But again, it's hard. You will need to manage expectations, but you will need to be very ambitious in the way that you seek to translate and transfer the outputs of your research to impact. And of course, that consistent leadership and drive is going to be essential. Your researcher training and laying the foundations for the next generation, it's fantastic to see. And so I think that visual intelligence is an absolutely superb new venture for Norwegian AI and for Norwegian science, engineering, its society and its economy in general. So I'm going to close there, and I'll just sit back now and enjoy the rest of the opening. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Mark. Fantastic presentation and talk, and very, very inspirational for us in visual intelligence. I'm looking very much forward to working with you in the continuation, learning from you. For the audience, I would just like to mention that Mark is one of the best well-known names in AI, machine learning statistics in the world, basically, and also has this very unique background working on the real problems in the world, transferring academic research into value and solutions in the society. And I'm also very, very pleased to announce that Mark will also formally be with us in visual intelligence in a professor position, so-called Professor 2, in visual intelligence. And this will be a fantastic journey, and we will learn a lot and hopefully do lots of good things together. So thank you again so much, Mark. And next on the agenda is lead engineer Erik Steen from a company which is called GE Vingmed Ultrasound, which is based here in Norway, but a part of the General Electric big concern. And as I told you earlier, they're also a part of our consortium in visual intelligence. Now we are waiting for just a couple of minutes for Erik to set up his equipment and talk. So in the meantime, Mark, are you still with me? Then I might ask you, and you have to unmute when I ask you the question. So I was intrigued by the fact that you started your career working in IBM and then you went into academia. Do you think that this influenced you somehow later on in academic life, leading these very big institutes that you are leading at the intersection of academic research and problem solving?
Yes, I think it was very useful period for me. IBM at the time I was there was, it still is one of the global leading companies in electronics and in computing in particular. And so the experience that I got mainly from running very large projects, having to deliver them, under, in some cases, severe pressures, really put me in, I think, gave me a good tool set in terms of even just running my own little research group, and then running, larger and more complex projects. So I think it was certainly very useful for me. I still made lots of mistakes, but probably made a few less than most of my colleagues who never had that experience.
That's fantastic to hear about. I'm looking very much forward to working with you, your group, your students, and also the wider environments at Cambridge and the Alan Turing Institute. So thank you so much. And then we will have Erik from GE Vingmed Ultrasound. So Erik has a very major role in the success of GE Vingmed Ultrasound. And I'm super impressed by the achievements of this company. And as we'll hear from Erik, AI and machine learning is a major part of the developments and the products of this company. And very happy that we are together now in visual intelligence to learn from each other, work together, and provide new solutions. So Erik, if you're ready, then please go ahead.
Okay. So my name is Erik Steen. I'm chief engineer with the cardiovascular ultrasound business in GE Healthcare. So I'm working normally in Horten in Norway, but I'm also responsible for the technology development in China, where we also have a department. So I will give a little bit of background and business vision. I'll talk about, AI vision and mission, a bit about our technology platform, give a few examples, and talk a little bit about the path forward. So what is medical diagnostic ultrasound? Basically, you have a system with a front end that sends electrical pulses to an ultrasound probe. These are converted to acoustic waves through piezoelectric elements. And the way these, there are a lot of elements in the probe, and the way this is steered, you are kind of focusing an ultrasound beam in a special direction. And by doing that in many different directions after each other, you are forming an image. This is a very simple way to explain it. And when the probe is in listening mode, it receives, the acoustic waves and the electrical signals go back to the front end, where the image is then reconstructed in what's called beamforming process. and then it's processed and displayed in an industrial PC. So this is in very high level how an ultrasound scanner works. And the ultrasound scanner can operate in many different modes. These are just a few examples. You can look at tissue morphology. You can look at vessel morphology. You can look at the blood velocity using the Doppler effect. And ultrasound can be used for many, many different applications, everything from fetal scanning to cardiology, where I'm working, and breast scanning and many other. So compared to many other imaging modalities, it's a real time. You are scanning and looking at the images as you scan. It is safe. It's never been any issues with the ultrasound and safety, as long as the equipment stays within the acoustic limits. It's low cost, and we have system ranging from very low cost to premium systems. They are portable and relatively easy to use. So if you look at the market, the cardiovascular part of the ultrasound market, it's a little bit more than $1 billion. It's growing a little bit, but not too much. And it's really a two-horse race right now. It's GE and it's Philips. And we are more or less the same size. We think maybe that we gained some share from Philips late last year, but it's in general, it's quite similar. The biggest market is in the US, and then we have many other markets. For us, since we are a European company, or our cardiac business is in Europe, the European market is very important for us, and we have a very high market share in Europe. The market share in the US is lower, and it's fair to say that Philips is still a bit bigger than us there. But overall, we are about the same size. So what is cardiovascular ultrasound used for? It's done to assess structure and function of the heart. So when I talk about structure, it can be defects, holes, murmurs, vegetations. It can be fluid around the heart. When it comes to function, it's how the wall, the heart muscle is moving, how the blood is flowing, if the valves are leaking, what happens with the heart when I exercise. So all this dynamics is important. And then a growing field for us is using ultrasound also for surgical guidance and structural repairs, like for instance, replacing valves. And as we have seen in the latest year, there are many new devices that makes it possible to fix problems for old patients that can't be done normal surgery with. Yes. So GE Vingmed, the Norwegian entity, our main office is in Horten. We have a sizable office also in the research park in Oslo and a small office in Trondheim. We have quite a lot of research activity, especially in the Oslo office. And in Norway, we are mainly responsible for the high-end and premium ultrasound scanners. But there is also a separate unit, which is actually not part of cardiovascular ultrasound, but part of primary care ultrasound, working on handheld ultrasound. So we are co-located. Looking at from a top-level business vision, we really want to be an undisputed leader in all major regions of the world. And this requires, world-class products, production, service, distribution, marketing, and so on. A little bit interesting, of course, the pandemic is a really bad thing and bad for everybody, of course. But it also forces companies to think in new ways. So last year we did a big launch that were, supposed to be a physical launch at a congress. We had to do everything virtually. So we created kind of a virtual booth in a way, and this can actually be visited still. It's called gevividultradition.com. And a big part of our last release was the AI story and the AI features that we introduced. And I think this has been a huge success doing this virtually. So I think for the future, we will combine virtual and physical ways of introducing new features. So a little bit about our research in general. We are involved in a lot of different research programs, and it's, to stay ahead of the competition in the areas that are most important for us. It's to build competency in new areas, which we think are important long term. And, we started a AI program several years ago because we thought this is an area which will be important, and that was really true. I mean, it has become much more important now. Also, we want to capitalize on innovative research that can differentiate our products. And also very important is recruitment. We are supervising a large number of PhDs and postdocs, and this has been a way over a long time for us to recruit. Even myself, I was recruited back in 1996 from a PhD position that I had in Trondheim. I will not go into the detail here. This is mainly as an illustration of programs that we are involved in, several that are completely new, and visual intelligence is, one of them. It is fair to say that AI plays a role in most of these programs. So it's actually very important because many of the problems that we want to solve diagnostically, we think will have AI as part of the solution. So a lot of involvement in research and very important for us. And also, since Norway is a relatively high cost country, the way we can engage with external researchers is kind of offsetting a little bit of that. We have a lot of people working with us to help solving our problems. And this is unique, I think, within GE Healthcare. And it's a quite unique position that we have doing all that research. Then a little bit about our platform. A traditional ultrasound scanner like we had in the past, we get, the data or the electrical signals from the probe. They are digitized, and then there was, fixed hardware that created the images, and then the PC at the end that does the visualization. So in 2015, we launched a completely new platform that we call C-Sound. And the big difference there is that all this channel data that is digitized and coming into the system is going directly to the PC. And in the PC, we have 2 GPUs. If you know that, probably you know what a GPU is, a graphical processing unit. And these are then being used for image reconstruction and display. So that the big thing here was that it gave us the flexibility to innovate much faster, since we could program the algorithms that are used for image reconstruction and visualization in a much faster way. As it turns out, this platform is and will be even more important also for AI, because these computing resources will be central, are central and will be central for the AI features that we develop. And we knew that we had to create a very flexible platform. When we started, we didn't really think about AI at all, but lucky enough, it is also a very good AI platform. And the first thing that we did, the first release that we had, we made a really big improvement in image quality with this platform. So hopefully you can see the difference between the left image, where there is quite a lot of haze, compared to the right image, which has been reconstructed in software. And actually, one of the things that we want to look into the future is to enhance images even more with AI. Yeah, I'll skip this one. So when it comes to AI, what's our vision. So we really want to be a leading provider of solutions that increase efficiency and improves diagnostic confidence, and ultimately leading to improved outcomes for the patients. So there are many examples of where AI can be applied. Is to simplify and speed up clinical workflow, especially workflow that is used a lot. It's to speed up and increase accuracy of measurements that the physicians or the technicians do with the ultrasound images. It can be to combine multiple sources of information to arrive at set of a clinical finding. I mean, usually ultrasound is not used on its own. It's usually combined with other data sources to arrive at a diagnosis. AI can be used to detect abnormal structures and abnormal motion. And as mentioned, we think it can play a central role in improving image quality in the future. We have our first kind of way into AI was through a BIA program called Incus. So this is now finished, but it was for us a really important project to get into AI and be able to introduce AI features in our product. So actually the title of that program is the same as the title of this presentation, because I think it's still very valid. So basically what we looked at was, image interpretation, image optimization, and measurements, all very central things to look at. And as a basic block of what we developed, we started to look into the problem of automatically recognizing different views of the heart. And to explain this, the ultrasound probe can be placed in different physical locations on the body. And this kind of constitutes the main name of the view, but then the probe can be rotated and tilted in different ways. So at the end, you get several different ultrasound images that represent standard views that have a name. And the first project, which we spent a lot of time, and we worked very closely with the Norwegian Computing Center that did most of the data science. We had to collect a huge number of images, ultrasound loops with variable image quality and variable patient anatomy. We had to define separate test set for validation, and we had to make sure that these data was not originating from the same patients that were used for training. So these were from separate hospitals. The Norwegian Computing Center looked at many different architectures, and we ended up with something called ResNet 50. And the accuracy was very high. And this has been a part of our system for a couple of years now. It is, recognizing the view is not really useful in its own, but as I said, it's a building block in some of our features. And it will be a building block for future AI features that we develop. So one very important feature on our product is called automated function imaging, which basically is to analyze how the heart muscle is moving, contracting, and so on. Because most of patients that have a problem with the heart originates from some part of the heart muscle. So we had already an algorithm to track the motion of the heart, but there was quite a few manual steps how to select the different views and so on. So we speeded up the whole thing by letting the system recognize the view automatically and basically greatly reducing the number of clicks and manual steps that you need to do. And we are continuing this journey to make these type of measurements even more automatic. Another thing that we have looked at and which was introduced as a feature last autumn was to do something called a 2D caliper measurement, which basically means that you are measuring distances between different structures in the heart. And as I said, this was a very important part of this Vivid Ultra Edition launch. So you can actually see some examples there. One of the challenges here was to get enough data. Big challenge was that, when the physicians do the measurement, they are not really consistent. So two different physicians will do the same measurement in slightly different ways. And one of the reasons for that is that some of these landmarks are not so well defined. They are a bit vague. And therefore, there are different ways to look at it. So there was a lot of work to get the labeling consistent so that we could train the algorithm properly. So what's the path forward? We will continue expanding the set of the automated measurements. We are discussing to give customers more guidance when acquiring the data, so give feedback to the user how to orient the probe, or if there is a problem with the images that are being acquired. This is definitely something we are interested in and where there has been work going on in Trondheim, actually. We want to continue speeding up tedious tasks to free up time so that the physicians can spend more time on the difficult cases. We will introduce diagnostic support type of features to detect abnormal cases. As I mentioned, using AI algorithms to improve image reconstruction is something we will look into. And, very importantly, with visual intelligence is to improve our ability to work efficiently with AI, because there is a lot of work to develop an AI feature, and it has to do with managing data, labeling, curating it, lot of the documentation that we need to create for the regulatory authorities. So it's a lot of work. This is not an ultrasound example. This is an example of MR scan, which has been done with the GE Healthcare MR scanner. And they actually already introduced AI as part of the imaging chain to make the images sharper and the scanning time reduced. So the right image is scanned with higher resolution and with less time than the left one. So some of the challenges that we are facing in our projects, as I mentioned, there is a lot of time spent on handling data. There are challenges to learn robustly from limited data. So data augmentation techniques can be important. A big challenge, as I said, handling human variation in the labeling process. Rare cases, where we don't get much training data, is a challenge to handle. And then, as mentioned, in a big part of this program is also how to handle uncertainty. For instance, we know that no algorithm is perfect. So for the view recognition example, we have to put thresholds, when do the system, when is it so uncertain about the view that we can't really tell. That is, a difficult challenge to define that threshold. There are other problems, when the algorithm are really sure about something but still wrong. So I think there are still unsolved problems in this area. We spend a huge amount of time in the initial phase of the algorithm development, and when I present our vision for this year, I will come back to that tomorrow. So I think that was what I planned to say, Robert.
Thank you so much, Erik, Chief Engineer in GE Vingmed Ultrasound. This was very, very interesting, illuminating, and inspiring. And it will be a great pleasure to continue in this path as we move forward. So thank you again. And I would just like to, as we are now closing the end of this official opening of Visual Intelligence, to point you to our website. If you want to go there and have a closer look, then please do that. visualintelligence.no under development. So there might be some things to develop further there, of course. And then also, if anybody is interested, so it just happens so that visual intelligence is hitting the ground with the feet running. We're already organizing a conference next week, actually, digitally because of the circumstances. This is the Northern Lights Deep Learning Workshop, and you can have a look at the program at nldl.org or register if you want to. So this is a visual intelligence conference, basically, which will be important in the years to come. So with this, I'd like to thank you all for staying with us in this official opening of Visual Intelligence, and thank you so much.